Hello, and welcome to this video that I call the Universal Christ. The concept of time and the measurement by humankind of its passing have been present on this planet for millennia. For as long as this has been so, and even before then, there have come among us at various intervals of time those persons whose lives have been so exemplary that they have blessed and changed the lives of those around them to such a degree that their ideas and ideals continued in a positive way to affect the lives of others long after they had left this mortal shell behind and gone on to higher realms. The names of many such persons have long been lost in the midst of time as the ages have rolled by. More recently, the names of some have been remembered. They've been repeated by word of mouth, then later written down century after century to the present day. Further along, I will mention just a few of those names. Depending upon the culture and traditions under which one has lived, the names and times of those special persons may differ, but many of the stories, I suspect, are similar to one degree or another. I have lived under Western tradition with rather strong Judeo-Christian influence in the upbringing process. The focus in that area, therefore, should not be surprising to the viewer. A life under other traditions would likely have brought forth the names of different personalities as examples of the above, but the concept would be the same, and some of the stories perhaps even somewhat similar. Each human person is born with, let's say in quotes, the seed, for lack of a better word, of the universal Christ within themselves. To what degree that seed even begins to germinate within a person, much less completes that process and then begins to grow toward maturity, depends upon the decisions made by that person within their lifetime, and by decisions made by that personality in many previous incarnations, the sum total of which constitutes the previous preparation and the potential for growth of the individual person being considered. A very small number of those persons, because of many right decisions over many lifetimes, are born with the potential in a particular lifetime to experience the growth of the universal Christ within themselves to such a degree that eventually they actually experience a oneness with the manifestation of the then fully mature universal Christ Spirit within themselves. They experience Christhood, or become Christed. This is an extremely difficult path for someone to follow in their life to the degree necessary to experience such a manifestation of Christhood. As you might imagine, there have been exceedingly few who have had such a blessing. The speaker does not pretend to know all their names. It can be said, however, that among those have been Zoroaster, Moses, Buddha, and Jesus, to name just some of those select few. There are, without question, many people today who feel that it is impossible to attain such a high spiritual state in our modern times. If you have access to a Judeo-Christian Bible, however, you will be able to see otherwise. The universal Christ Spirit, who had created a state of oneness with the Master Jesus, the man who was therefore the Christ, taught that greater things than those which had been done would be done. This is stated in the Judeo-Christian Bible in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 12, and its meaning is that which the Master Jesus had attained, and even greater things others could and would attain also. It would be worthwhile to state here that contrary to the understanding of many followers of Christianity, this does not exclude Christhood. Most people who have read that biblical verse do not realize that such things are still possible today. It must be stated, however, that prior to the most recent period of 40 years or so, only one person among those who received this very special blessing of Christhood was actually born into a state of oneness with the fully mature universal Christ Spirit. The Master Jesus was the first person who became one with the mature universal Christ Spirit at the moment of birth. All those who had lived before the Master Jesus had attained that state of oneness at some later point in their lives, when they became worthy and ready to receive that glorious blessing. Now, once again, the consciousness and understanding of humankind has been raised sufficiently, and the need is such that the earth is ready for another of God's messengers to come and once again unveil and reveal to us yet another, even higher level of truth that will help to bring us to yet another higher level of understanding of God's universe. This person's message will not be for the Jews or for the Arabs or for the North or South Americans or for the Africans or for the Asians or for the Europeans. It will be for all of them and for all their people. It will be for all the world. For that purpose there is now another who has, like the Master Jesus, been in a state of complete oneness with the universal Christ Spirit since the moment of birth. That person's name or place of residence or when the work that will be done by that person will begin in earnest, I do not know, and it's likely that neither does any other living person, with the possible exception of that person and the two parents of that person, who, if they are alive, may know that their child is the Christ, but even that is not certain. This person is one with the universal Christ Spirit, just as the beloved Master Jesus was in his time. Furthermore, just as the beloved Master Jesus was the master for the Piscean, or as some call it the Piscean age, this person who is alive, growing, maturing, and preparing on our planet today is a master for the Aquarian age. When this person's ministry or work begins in earnest, that work will include laying the spiritual foundation for future humankind. When that work is done, this master for the Aquarian age will then leave us to become the planetary logos, and those who are so chosen will remain here for a time to build upon that spiritual foundation that has been laid down. This will allow humankind in the years following to continue on the path away from the materialism of today and back to a far greater sense of love and brotherhood and sisterhood. Even more importantly, to stay on the path back to God, the Father of us all. As it was in the time of the Master Jesus, those who will not recognize this avatar as the universal Christ, those who will persecute and despise the Master most, will be those who are supposedly among the most devoutly religious of our day. Those same persons will be the ones who mistakenly expect the return of the man Jesus rather than the return of the universal Christ Spirit. This universal Christ Spirit has once again, as it was with the Master Jesus, come with the birth of a human child and in a state of oneness with the spirit of that child, just as it was done before and just as it will be done again, at least one additional time in the future. Sadly, even if the man Jesus were to return today to this earth, neither would those same people recognize him, and so they would therefore persecute and despise him again today, as others like them did 2,000 years ago. Perhaps these doubters would need to see a bright halo around the top of his head to show them a sign before they will believe. But such a halo is not visible to normal physical eyesight. If it were, they would certainly not have crucified the Master Jesus when they did 2,000 years ago, because there would have been no doubt to all who saw him that he was indeed a very special man. Such a halo, however, is visible only to those who have eyes to see, and so therefore will a great many of the most religious of the day fail to recognize the presence of the beloved universal Christ Spirit yet again. The beloved Master Jesus has completed his work upon our planet. He first served as the master of the Piscean or Piscean, as some call it, age, the man whose spirit was one with the universal Christ spirit. He then has acted in a spiritual capacity for approximately the last 2,000 years as our planetary logos. The man Jesus, who was one with the universal Christ and who was therefore the Christ, as stated earlier, has no need to return to this earth in physical form. When it was written that he would return, the he of whom it was being written was the universal Christ Spirit, who, in a state of oneness with the spirit of the man Jesus, occupied that body at that time. It was the return of the universal Christ Spirit that was being spoken of then, not the return of the man Jesus. For additional emphasis, let me restate that because Jesus was one with the universal Christ Spirit, this means that Jesus was the Christ. When the master of the Aquarian age has completed all needed work here in the physical body, that person will then become our planetary logos, and the beloved Master Jesus will go on to become the Holy Solar Logos, the spiritual force behind our physical sun in this solar system. The universal Christ Spirit is the spiritual force behind the great central sun of God's universe. This is the way of such things. For some who see what has been stated here, these words will seem to have no basis in truth and will be considered instead as blasphemy. For a growing number of people around the world, however, what is stated here makes perfect sense. Excuse me. And some may even find as they watch that these words, which are truth for them, strike a resonant chord within their beings. It is for these latter that this has been stated and these videos have been created. It is for them and for others who may be somewhere in between in their thinking and in their searching for answers that will somehow make sense to them. Again, that these words have been stated here and that the videos have been created. It's for the entire planet, however, that the Master of the Aquarian Age, the Universal Christ, has come, and it is for the entire planet that this Master will work to lay the spiritual foundation for the future of our world and all of us who reside upon it. This spiritual foundation will then become the basis for the future of society for all of humankind on the planet Earth for more than 1,000 years to come, and the universal Christ will once again be the cornerstone. I want to thank you for watching. You're now invited to watch the first video of several that will cover questions and answers from our frequently asked questions portion of this series of videos. Thank you very much.